What's up? What's up? Let me move that computer closer so I can see a little bit better. All right. See if we get a couple more people in here. So I figured this topic would be a hell of a topic, and there's a whole lot of ways and a lot of things to cover here. So I'm going to definitely wait for the few more people to show up, give it a few minutes, maybe like 3 or 4 minutes before I start getting into some of the simple things that are pretty obvious, but oh, I need markers. Marker. Right. Then here. So, of course, everybody's welcome. You know, my simple rules for those of you that don't know, be courteous, no trolling, none of that stupid stuff. We're not here for that. We're here for just facts, you know. So, give it another minute. Wonder if I can get that in a better position. Let's see. Can you guys read that? I know that's terrible handwriting. Maybe I can. Maybe see if I don't know if I can zoom that in, but well, if anybody's been trying to reach me, I've answered all emails and texts in the last 48 hours. So, if unless it's pertaining to something along the lines of you're tuning your car somewhere else and not with me and asking me how to fix the problem, those are not things that I do. So I do have a business to run. So, well, I don't know what to tell you. About a month ago, that's a month ago. I don't even know at this point what the question was. And again, it was pertaining to, if it's not pertaining to a customer, to my product or something that's working with me directly, I don't really get involved in it anymore. I can't spend that kind of time on that kind of stuff. So for a potential business, I don't know what you're talking about, but right now that's not the time or place for something like that. If it's something pertaining to a wholesale account, my rules on a wholesale account is you have to purchase multiples of an item. So, okay, let's go past that. The number one thing that gets overlooked, okay, is tires. Everybody in the world sits there, and the first thing they don't think about is tires. I can't emphasize that enough. Generally, you're 60 to 130. You're going to need, if you want to really something that's going to go sub 8s, you need a 100 tread wear tire. not a 200, not a 220, not an all-season tire. It doesn't matter if you have a 315 wide tire. You need a 100 tread wear tire or lower. Anything else is not going to get you into the 8s or lower. So just for a reference, if you're looking for that, you can get into the mid-8s maybe on something on a 200 tread wear. The next thing everybody goes for is horsepower. And I'm going to get into more details, but I'm just going through the basic stuff right now. Obviously, that matters, okay? But where you make your horsepower. So I will get into that as well, okay? Suspension. This plays a role when you get to a certain level of horsepower. When you start getting into the upper 400s, like 480-ish, that's going to start to play a role, especially if you do like an anti-lift kit. The next thing is going to be your gears. What gear ratio are you running? So because a lot of people have put in an Fl5 final in a stock Fk8, some people put the RV6 gear in. A lot of people don't know the RV6 fourth gear is shorter. So that's going to change your 60 to 130. So if you were revving to on a stock gearbox to 8,200 RPM in fourth, and you change to the RV6 fourth, you're no longer going to get to 130 in fourth gear. And the last thing that I was just thinking about, and this is where people seem to think this is going to make up for it, and this is the biggest misconception. Traction control. Guys, no amount of traction control on this planet can make up for good tires. So that's why the first thing I put in there is tires. So if you have a freaking drag radial on the car and you're making 500 horsepower, you're going to blow the doors off of the next guy who's got, even with all the suspension, traction control, and everything else in the world, and the guy's got an all-season tire on, it's not going to matter. You could have a tire twice as wide as yours, and you could have a stock width drag radial, and you're going to blow the doors off of him. So, I mean, that's simple enough. Now, where it gets complicated, where you make your power. What horsepower do I need to do an 8 flat 60 to 130? Believe it or not, you don't need more than 500. That's it. 500 will get you 8s and sub 8s. So who here is just on stock motor? Actually, I'm just going to kind of go over on stock motor two ways. Two ways, stock motor, no cams. How do you get there? And which is better? Now, this is where you go MHI or RV6. Which is going to get you there quicker? So, okay, well, Chris, you're a perfect example. You have an MHI and you have an RV6. Here's the catch. I could literally mix less in an RV6 and outrun the MHI. Well, how's that possible, right? Like, that doesn't make any sense. So there's one huge factor in this. I'm terrible at drawing, but I'm going to do my best, guys. I'm really going to do my best at drawing. Now, I'm going to cross this lines. Look, and it's, I'm going to do that a little bit more exaggerated. Okay, we're going to say this is 6,800 and we're going to say this is 520. We're going to say this is 500 horsepower. All right, so the MHI will start to come back down around 72, which would be right in the middle there. And that's where power starts to come back down. They both spool around the same time. But even if I was making 20 horsepower less on the MHI and 20 horsepower less on the RV6, if I go out to 7,800, which is very easy to do on an RV6 on a stock motor, I'm going to be up there for 400 more RPM above 500 horsepower. Not only that, down here, where we're only in maybe 400, 420, so let's say probably no, it could be more than that, like 450, okay? We're going to start, so we have 400 higher. I know this sounds weird. You don't get 400 RPM more down low, higher up down. It's around, I think it's 300 down here. I've done the math. So here you are, the RV6, you might only be making 500 up here, but you're starting at 470 instead of 450, and you got 400 more RPM. That is literally, although that sounds weird to make less peak horsepower, that's probably going to be 2 to 3 tenths faster. So picking your RPM range, RPM and not quite peak horsepower is going to win every time. So that's another thing. Now, I've gone over the tires part. That's the simple part. The shifting, that's up to you. What gear do I start in? Okay, well, you can, there's somebody out there that said that they started in 4th gear and did a 60 to 130 in 8 seconds flat on a bone stock motor. Either the guy was putting astronomical amount of boost in it down low, which is horrifying to me. It scares the piss out of me, is what he was thinking about doing. Said he did a 60 to 130 in 8 seconds flat on a bone stock motor with an RV6 and just stock fuel system and methanol only. I find a lot of missing pieces in that, especially being the graph seemed to be that you didn't see some laziness in the 60 to 130 and pickup that you would normally see due to the low RPM range. Whether we realize it or not, no matter where you put the cam timing on these cars, okay, they're not really going, unless you're on Motec, it's a little different. You're not going to see a big amount of torque below 42-ish, 100 RPM, 4,000 RPM on these cars. If you're running Honda, you're really just not going to see that. So I believe the math turns out to be, well, actually, I'll tell you right now because I know the ratios. So if I do this gear ratio, mile per hour calculator, should be Spicer parts, 4.11 final, 25.8 inch tire, RPM 3,500, so 1.125. So he'd be down around 3,600 RPM. And the amount of stress that would put on the engine, if you could manage to make enough torque to really overcome the loss of just running 3rd gear, I don't even want to go there. Like, if we did that, it would literally have to be like 28 pounds, 30 to 30 pounds or something stupid down low. Yeah, 26-inch tall tire. All right, well, we're talking about somebody else on a different car. We're not talking about Accord-wise. We're talking about, it was a Type R, bone stock motor, no apparent tire size difference. The math just didn't make any sense. Now, the next step, 7 flat. This is, you can make 800 wheel horsepower. Again, we go back to the tires. 7s is a different ballpark altogether. In order, you can get into the upper 7s. You could even possibly get into, you can get with the proper tuning and cams and the right turbo, you could definitely get a 7 flat. Pushing it out on a stock bottom end with like a G30 770. That will get you there. You will need like TR2 cams. You will definitely, I know that Nick with a stock cylinder head, although it was a built bottom end, and again, he was on Motec, had a G3900. He ran like a 6.9 something, which is incredible. But to consider, it was just over 600 horsepower. Now, this is where it starts getting kind of ridiculous, because now you're fighting other factors. You're fighting traction. You're fighting the amount of boost per gear. The control in Honda gets tougher at this point. So how can you solve this? Believe it or not, Honda has a better solution for this than Motec. Again, this is to a certain point, and some of you people understand it, and some people do not understand it. It's in their traction control. So just so you know, I will tell you this much: unless you are on a small turbo, PPG gears will hurt your 60 to 130. It will absolutely hurt it. So I have found with even a G3900 with like the ported head, you're really kind of pushing the limit on the 60 to 130. I had an easier time doing a 7.0 60 to 130 on bone stock gears than I did, and I did it on Honda, and I did it blowing the tires off. So the next thing is, once you've got, oh yeah, let's do this one step first. Suspension parts. What are we changing here? So what's most important in a 60 to 130 in your suspension? Your rear spring rate needs to be higher. You do want the car lower, not slammed to the unbelievable to the ground. Okay, you don't want that either, because you get too much camber. And then an anti-lift kit. So what I did, even though I went from a 315 tire to a 275, I actually did Swift springs with the RV6 compliance in the front, and that made a very big difference, because I went from a 315 to a 275 tire and got better traction. Yeah, Nick is on an Accord final drive. Yeah, that's it. He just, I don't know, he did it good. How do I feel about port injection on these cars? No. I'm just going to say no, don't do it. Can you explain why your tuner math list with everybody, including Honda, says that the car needs a math? And all right, so I'm going to explain this real quick on the math tuning. The car does not need a math, and there is always a base VE table. The reason I do no math, and you will find JSR does it with cams too, because I showed them, it's the only way to fuel accurately on a ported head with TR2 cams to hit target fuel accurately. What will happen is if you run the math and try to hit your target fuel accurately, it doesn't matter. When you hit a certain amount of airflow, the ECU goes nuts trying to calculate between the base VE table that's there in the background, whether you can realize it or not. It has a volumetric efficiency table and the primary math reading. And it will suddenly go lean 20% and then flood the shit out of it with the lean at 5,500, flood the shit out of it at 7,200, and you will never make clean power. So that's why I do a no math tune. It has absolutely nothing to do with that. You do not need the MAP sensor to run on the car. I have proven it time and time and time again. You don't need it. It's not needed. You cannot, especially on TR3 cams, run it. There is no amount of compensating for the MAF in order to correct that, because the MAF is a total volume and the VE is a set boost versus RPM. So you can never correct that. So you have to go no MAF with cams in order to hit target fuel correctly. That's just the way it is. And if it hits target fuel, that's what matters. Okay, guys? It does not matter anything else but the fact that it's target fuel. If it's a 12.5, it's a 12.5, whether it's a MAF or not. So I'm not going to explain any more of that. From what? Sale from, I can't read that. And what? So I can't read who the heck from. God, my glass. Let me get my other glasses. And then I'm going to get back to the traction control. SES. I'm not going to get into SES. I'm not even going to talk about it. Please do not bring up other companies. We're not going to do that. Do me a favor. Leave the buddy stuff out of here. If you're an SES fanboy, this is not the right place for you. Okay. I'm not going to get into it. The guy talked trash about me first. I'm not going to get into it. Please leave that out of here. This is not the place for that. Go somewhere else. I'm going to just straight out say that. That's that. All right. I don't agree. The port injection is shit on Honda because there's no real control to do it the right way. I'm not finagling it. I'm not going to be one nuking head gaskets left and right like he does. End story. Next topic. Traction control. So you can do boost by gear, but the thing is you have different traction surfaces. So when you have different traction surfaces, this makes it more difficult. Okay. So you might have, maybe your tires are a little bit warmer. So you're going to get a less consistent 60 to 130. So now you have, maybe this surface is a little bit better, but now your tires are colder. So you're going to be constantly fighting, how much boost per year. Now, this is where Honda is actually superior than Motec, okay? And that's simply in PID. What is PID? Honda has a standard traction control settings, but you can tune via PID. PID is kind of pretty simple. At least to me, it's simple as far as tuning. Let's look at it this way, and I'll explain it very shortly, as quickly as I can. Let's say you want to hit 60 miles an hour. You're in cruise control. You add to the P function until you get close, okay? That'll be close to your target of 60. And then if you go too high, it'll get kind of wonky. So it'll get out of sync and do some weird stuff. The I brings it up to it, right? But it'll do this a little bit, up and over and up and over. Then you add to your D, which is your derivative, to smooth it out. That's PID. It's that simple. With PID traction control, you can set it to pull more ignition timing at a higher slip rate. Okay? When you pull more timing at a higher slip rate, you do risk a higher EGT. There is that risk. So make sure that your car is on ethanol and not on like 93 borderline tuned to the world's edge when you're doing something like this. That is going to benefit you in the way that regardless of your surface that you're running on, you can run the same boost level, but the PID is going to pull ignition timing and bring your horsepower and torque level down just right to keep you within a certain amount of slip rate for that surface. I guarantee you, using PID and tuning the car with the PID traction control will be the best thing you ever did for your 60 to 130. So that'll be the best thing you could ever do to your 60 to 130. Just for reference, I have had customers that literally, so he did a 60 to 130 of 8.3, and I don't remember the tires. It was a stock gears. It was a G25 660 car tuned by me, and the biggest thing was fighting the traction in each gear. And by simply tuning the PID, okay, basically tuning it so that it would only allow so much slip rate, he ran an 8.0. Now, this goes in line for every gear, though, too. So first gear, second gear, third gear. Now, there is a limit you got to watch. You do it too much, the car's going to act like anti-lag, and you will blow your shit up because you don't want to be getting into negative ignition timing. But the PID can pull 20 degrees of timing in less than an eighth of a second. You personally can never make that adjustment that fast. And you can literally, depending on how the car is, you can make it seamless so the driver can't even notice it's doing it. So that's like with Matthew's car over at the track, the PID was seamless because while he was driving, I tuned the PID seamless. Now I know some of it was lap experience coming back in, but he dropped 7 seconds off his lap times at Coda Raceway. So that was a bit of by gear and a bit of by PID traction. Do you need traction control on for PID to be active? Yes, but not factory traction control. You need Honda traction control on, which the PID is. So the Honda traction control, if you take the cruise button and illuminate the cruise light on the dash. So my year, I think it's 17, 18, and 19, the cruise light turns gray. I think for 20 and 21, it says something like ACC on. You're not actually using the cruise control, but it's in standby mode. That will shut it off entirely. And you will, because pegging the rev limiter is a bajillion times slower than keeping the car within about 10% slip rate. So you want to be somewhere between 6 and 10% if you're riding the PID. You don't want to do anything before 6%, because if you do, you might not really be braking traction, but the percent of slip rate is your wheel speed front versus your wheel speed back. You might have one tire that maybe it'll brake a little bit, but then catch. You don't want it turning on at 3 or 4%, because naturally 3 or 4% is just the difference in the tire rotation from simply the weight loss on the front and the squash on the tires in the back. So that alone makes a difference. So, and then probably the last thing, and it's also pretty important, is tire pressure. You can't go out there on 32 pounds of tire pressure and expect to have any sort of decent 60 to 130. So I would say the maximum tire pressure on any given tire for a decent 60 to 130 is 26 pounds is the maximum. So your rear tires obviously don't really matter. So you can leave them at 30 if you want. 31, actually factory's 32. But somewhere, depending on the tire, between 20 26 PSI. Naturally, this would kind of be along the lines, 20 would be a cold pressure, and 26 would be more along the lines of a hot pressure. Some tires don't really change as much when they get hot, and some tires change a lot when they get hot. P versus MHI. MHI wins on a 60 to 130 on a P600. MHI wins when it's tuned right. All you can do is ask Abe. You need. Well, okay, so the fastest documented 60 to 130 that I've seen that I know is legitimate, that the car was what it says it was, believe it or not, is like a 6.9 something, and that was Nick. And it was on like 620 horsepower, which, again, you don't need like 900 horsepower to do into the sixes on your 60 to 130. You also don't need 900 horsepower to run mid-nines either. Depending on your setup, somewhere between 6 and 700 can actually get you into the nines in the quarter mile. So some weight reduction, use a slipper clutch and a sequential, and in the mid 600s, you can run nines all day. MHI or RV6. RV6 will get you your 6130 better. I went over that in the beginning. You've got more RPM, and even if you make less peak horsepower, if you've got 400 more RPM at 500 horsepower versus and 300 RPM starting later at 20 more horsepower, an RV6 will win every time. It's RPM. The only way, there are a couple ways to run full E85. if you're going to keep your car below 575, okay, 575 and lower, then must be tuned right. XDI 2000cc injectors, my high pressure line, a DW300C, and an XDI pump. So XDI pump is not the only high pressure pump that is enough for that. There is going to be more options soon in the future. So I cannot disclose any information at this point, but all I can say is there is something in a prototype phase right now. So that is all I can say, is that it's in a prototype phase, and you can do full E85 on direct injection only, and it's far safer than trying to add port injection to Honda. So far, of the cars I've seen, about, I would say, long term, I have not seen a single car on port injection on Honda last long term without blowing head gasket or blowing the bottom end out, because they're all trying to go too far with it, trying to make like 50% of the fuel on port, and Honda won't allow that. Well, I don't know who he is, and maybe it's documented, maybe it's video, but don't know if the car is what he says it is. All I'm saying is that's what I've seen. It's not about, who did what, and it's not a pissing contest either. I really don't care. I'm over that shit. I'm over the drama. What gear ratio do I recommend? Well, that's entirely dependent on the car, on what you have. Believe it or not, if you can get to 8,200 RPM running stock gears, you can do a 60 to 130 in 3/4, which is going to be your fastest 60 to 130. I don't know where the Accord final drive starts and ends in the third and fourth gear, but I believe adding the Accord final drive, aka the Fl5 final drive, to it is going to be better. Well, not getting mad, but you're putting, it's documented, LOL, like you're laughing at me. So I'm just not going to put up with it. I'm over it. I don't know what's funny about it. There's nothing funny about it. Yeah, but you're talking about one car of how many. I'm not even going to get into all the guys that came to me saying I've blown a head gasket 3 and 4 times. Okay? That's just, it is what it is. I have pictures of 3 different engines with the same thing. So there are many things that cause this. Actually, you know what? I have this in front of me. See this, guys? Look between every cylinder. All right. You know what this is? This is using a stud besides ARP. That's what happens. There are things that I believe in longevity. When you take a car and you try to make upper 500s, you're doing port injection on a stock fuel, on a stock base fuel system, you will have problems. You have to turn it down because there is a limit to what you can use. That is just the way it is. So the problem is, it's not multi-port, it's sequential port. So it is spraying on the back of the valve when it is shut. It sprays both on the open valve and the closed valve. Okay? Firing orders 1-3-4-2. It's spraying on 1-3 and 4-2 at the same time on every rotation. So you're getting a puddle of fuel shot against the back wall of the pit of the cylinder. Okay? That's why I said there's a limit to that. Why you should have more control of the combustion chamber via direct injection than a proper fuel mixture, not a puddle of fuel coming in there followed by a spray of fuel. If you understand how the port injection works and understanding sequential injection, and the right and the wrong way, and understanding the combustion in the limits of fuel offset and Honda. Doing things like offsetting the air charge, offsetting the MAF scaling in order to compensate for fueling in port injection is wrong because it totally screws the air charge calculation up. So there's only one other way to do it, and then you can't run a flex fuel sensor at the same time. So you need to pick your battles, pick and choose. If you really understand how to tune the car and how it works and what the limits of the factory ECU are, you'll understand why port injection has its limitations. The SI Street Tune. Hey, can you have one live where you don't come in and talk about other people's shit then? Because you want to talk about me talking shit about somebody else. How about you just don't come in here? I'm not in the mood for this anymore, man. Go somewhere else. My live's about me and my 60 to 130, not about SES. Yo, brought them up, not me. What do you want me to say? Leave. It's that simple. They were here about 60 to 130. We're not here to bring up port injection or SES or anybody else. It's just facts, man. Well, like I said, the only one I know of was 6.9 by Nick. And I don't have documented, but I'm sure there's quicker. I'm positive of it. I'm sure people have gone quicker than that. There are many people who don't care to document and show everybody. I'm sure there's guys out there that are running low sixes. It's very possible, especially when you consider, guys going down the drag strip. I'm sure their 60 to 130 while they're going down the drag strip is a lot better than a 7.0 or a 6.7. The street stuff is a little different, but you got to remember, if somebody's running a 9.5 and they're crossing the mark they're crossing the track at the other end at 9.5 at I think what's I like 150 something, his 60 to 130 is like 6, because it's only there for another 3.5 seconds. So you got what's a 60 foot or maybe what a 1.6. So you got that 60 foot. He's doing 60 by the time he's out there. You got that last 20 miles an hour. So it's in the low sixes somewhere. It's going to be fast. Kelford Stage 2 or TR3. I choose Kelford Stage 2. I've run both. The Kelford Stage 2 is going to be harder to tune. It has about 10 to 15 degrees of physical more lift duration, because I could see the wear mark on the cam from the contact of the rocker and did the math for it, and it's about 15 degrees more physical lift duration. It's in the low lift area, so it definitely helps with the drivability, but having the bigger cam, you have less idle vacuum. It's definitely harder to tune. Neither of those cams do I recommend to tune on Honda. I would highly recommend those be Motec only. If you really want like the Kelford Stage 1, I definitely say the Kelford Stage 1s are more ideal and can be tuned within reason of Honda. And then the last one is the Kelford drop-in. This is a true drop-in. I actually have these. I ran these, tested these. This is a true drop-in camshaft. This is not like have to put VCT pins in. So I would say that I would consider the Kelford, it's the TR2 cam and NSR cam, no springs required. And while this Kelford drop-in is a true drop-in, and you do not need to run VCT limiter pins, so you can just put the cam gears right on these. And I like the machining on these. The machining on the Kelfords are really good. The other thing that Kelford does on the bigger cams with the bigger lobes, they make the cam itself bigger so that you have less cam flex, and also so that when you're going over the lift for each rotation, the cam doesn't want to shutter like this between each lift. You get that momentum of the bigger camshaft. You will find though this is bigger than 24 millimeter on the bigger cams. So oh yes, yeah, it's funny because your car is not even like tuned. It's on like 26 pounds or 27 on 93, and it's not even tuned because you had a fuel filter assembly clog, and it still went like 8, 9 or something like that, making low power, but you revved really high. So yeah, you're 60 to 130, considering what it was and the horsepower that you're at. Yeah, that's pretty damn good. I was very surprised. We can all get along, provided that people don't come in here and bring up other companies and promote other companies in here in my live. We can talk about what we want to as far as products and whether I agree or disagree. If I disagree for a certain reason, I'm going to say why I disagree. And if you're going to continue to go back and forth, I'm not going to do it. So I'm just setting a line in the sand. I'm not putting up with it anymore because I'm getting so tired of dealing with it. If you guys really understood all the stuff I hear and all the stuff I've been called by all these other people that you are bringing up, you would understand my frustration. So one of them being that I've been called racist, which I really did not want to get into. But that is why I have my frustrations. So, and I'm just drawing a line in the sand. You know, that's just that easy. I want to talk about the stuff, the 60 to 130. You guys want to bring up some of the products and some of the stuff I've tested. Cool. You know, if I say I don't want to do something, I don't agree with doing something, and I say why I don't agree with it, I just want to move on to the next topic. I'm not going to sit here and debate it, you know. So there's just no point because we're just going to go in circles. That's all it is. So let's just move forward because that's all I want to do is move forward. So what happened here? Because I did bring this up. This was head studs, and basically because the studs were either not torqued right or because the studs just lifted, it just regular horsepower pulled up right in here and pulled up between the and blew out every single cylinder. Turbo restrictions, camshafts, R660, Telford Stage 1, Motec pros and cons. Interesting. So, well, that's fine. We can look it up on Draggy. Does he have a video too? Because unless you have a live video, I won't. I've seen people, you know, do some dumb things on Draggies. So, and I've seen Draggies be wrong by 2 3/10 of a second. I'm not saying he didn't go that fast, but me personally, on my 60 to 130s, you know what I go by? The rear wheel speed in my Motec data. That's what I go by. Not by GPS, not by some Draggy. I go by the rear wheel speed of the actual Motec data. So that is what I consider accurate, because you can be off by 1 to 2/10 of a second at least, depending with Draggy. It is very common for it to jump and misread and put you in different spots. I've seen it where there's the delay and you're 3/10 in and then it reads you jump, you know. So just be aware of that. So the turbo restrictions for camshaft. That's another thing. I'll just go and touch on this real lightly. You can absolutely put too much camshaft in a car. Like I would not put a tier 3 camshaft or a Telford Stage 2 on an MHI and then expect it to rev to 8,600 RPM or 8,000 RPM. Its back pressure is the problem. So what you would end up doing is just lowering the boost because of back pressure. A ported head or just even a Telford Stage 1 on stock head on an RV6 would be a nice combo. And if you're on Motec, there's just no cons to that. There's no negative to that whatsoever. The TR2 and the Kelford Stage 1 are very similar. The Kelfords have a little bit better lower end power, I'm going to say. At least that's what I found. They have a little bit better bottom end power. So, and that's because they spend a little bit more time in the low lift cam region where you got higher air speeds. And those higher air speeds are going to give you better fuel mixture versus spending like a lot of time. Like if you spend most of your time in a big lift region, a really sharp lift, it's going to be, yes, more air, but lower air speeds, so you don't get the mixture as good, so you won't get spooler response as good. I really can't. God, I need new glasses. Yeah, we're talking about TR2s and the TR2s, the 4-piston cam, and Skunk 2s, they're all close. So TR2, Skunk 2 drop-in, I think they call it, and the Kelford Stage 1 are all similar. I have not had them on hand firsthand to say that the Skunk 2s are the exact replica of the 4-piston cams, but I can say the machining and material looks identical from the photos. But I can't personally say this because I was not physically there or do not have. I have had both. I've had the stock cams next to the 4-piston cams next to the Kelfords. And there are machining differences in the cams that are relevant. So there are things with like the TR2s. There's a couple things I need to do with them before I put them in most cars to make sure there's no issues that I don't necessarily have to do with the Kelfords. So that's not saying there's something bad about the 4-piston cams, but I will say, like, you do not need anything bigger than a TR2 until you get like past 700 wheel horsepower and past like a 68 millimeter turbo. Like a TR3 cam or a Kelford Stage 2 on a G30 770 is kind of pointless. Forgive me. I'm going to say your last name. I'm going to say your last name is Xiong, Xiong. My apologies. I do not want to mess up your. So what you have on your car is typically around 530 wheel horsepower on ethanol, and can be go to upper fives on race fuel, provided you have enough cylinder head. So manifold, you're saying manifold. I no longer have the Prattworks manifold, and the reason that I don't have it anymore is because it made too much torque. It was too much. So 560 foot-pounds of torque is really hard on an engine at 6,600 RPM. The other thing is it was completely useless for my purpose. The downside to the Prattworks manifold is you're just not going to make power past like 78. It's going to roll off no matter what. So I am running a stock manifold. I am running a spacer plate. I do currently have direct port methanol on the car. So that spacer plate, though, does add a little bit of mid-range power. But the Prattworks manifold, if you're only revving to like 78, that thing's beast. All I can say is that thing is an absolute effing monster. I've never seen a manifold pick up horsepower in the mid-range like that on a ported head cam car. I have never seen 80 wheel horsepower from a frickin' manifold before. That, and people call me a liar on it, and then Red Star did it, and well, all right, nobody was lying anymore. It's just, if you have big cams and you put that manifold on, you're just going to pick up gobs of power from like 5,000 to 7,200. You're just going to pick up an astronomical amount of power on that. What does it give you in Motec data? I'm not sure what you mean about asking me in Motec data. Oh, if you're talking about 60 to 130, yeah. Calculate actual 60 to 130 based on actual wheel speed. Yes, Andy is right. If your wheel measurements are right, you're doing a true 60 to 130, regardless of satellites or anything like that. Um, you really do have a dead on, true, accurate 60 to 130. Can you remove the OEM feed line altogether and replace it with a braided line for return usage? What's up, Abe? Yeah, of course. Yes, you can. Absolutely. You can remove the OEM line. I just leave it in the car, though. It's really just not in the way. So right now that I got the time to put the aeromotive pump in, I have a -8 feed line to the front with a -6 return, and the factory line still just chilling there. There's plenty of room underneath the car to get underneath there and still tuck it away. Do I recommend methanol? Yes, I do. However, um, I'm going to tell you guys in advance, on a Prackworks manifold, methanol, due to the long runners, um, what happens is at lower RPM, cylinders 4 and 3 get more methanol, and at higher RPM, it gets blown to the other side of the manifold. Cylinders 1 and 2 get more methanol. So you have to run it fatter. Um, if you're going to do that in a practice stock manifold, it's not as much of an issue. If you really want to just solve it, you just do direct port methanol. Methanol, you have to be aware of your car. So, yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yep. You'll be here. Yep. Can see what it does on 93 and ethanol. So, I don't remember if are you going to run Maru? I don't remember you running ethanol. I don't remember. So, oh, MS 109. Yes. Okay. That's right. I forgot. Yep. Oh, that's another thing I should make some people aware of. Um, and this is a little bit of just a touch of understanding of ethanol and non-ethanol fuels. While we see a lot of cars running on pump gas, a 12 to air fuel ratio and such, uh, that is not something you would want to do on a non 10% ethanol fuel. So, if you have a car tuned on 93 pump with 10% ethanol, don't go and put 93 non-ethanol in it, because your cylinder temperatures will go through the roof. That 10% ethanol is worth quite a bit of horsepower, believe it or not. Um, it really is, surprisingly. And you need to offset 5% richer fuel for full non-ethanol fuels, uh, and or non-oxygenated fuels. So that's why Q16 you can get away with running leaner, but C16 you better be running an 80 lambda. So a 0.8 lambda. Sorry, not 80, 0.8 lambda. So I should mention that. God, I hate switching back and forth between the glasses. Oh, yes. Boosting. Is it possible to make 460 on 94 pump? Yes, with a larger turbo, but not on stock fuel system. How am I mounting the radium MPR? Oh, wait. Multi-port regulator? Is that what you're running for MPR for? That should be in the video. I connected it directly to I connected directly to a V2 PRL flex fuel kit, and I put one bolt from the flex fuel kit over in another bolt hole that was already there, and then the bracket for the flex fuel kit for the regulator, just one bolt behind there and one of the original flex fuel holes, and just right on the firewall. It fits, but you need to put fittings so that you can connect the fittings directly from the flex fuel to the regulator. So I use some of the fittings that I have from the lines that I make in order to get there. Oh, you're welcome. Let me see if I miss anything. Oh, yeah. Sorry, I didn't mention Boosting Professional. God, I forgot to answer that question. So this is not a complete replacement for race fuel, guys. There are a few downs, but very little. Not premium, but like Boosting Professional. If you're in an area that has like not so great or inconsistent fuel, I run this stuff when I need to. Where is it? Wait, here we go. This is, you can use this to make feasibly cheap 96 to 98 octane, depending on whether you have 93 or 91 octane, with a mere 4 ounces. Now, this is a 32 ounce can. It will cost you $32 for a 32 ounce can. So for around $4, you can boost the octane. Now, it's not consistent where you go, keep adding 1 ounce, you get this amount. But around 4 ounces per tank of fuel, you can be running around on about 96, 97 octane. You will get a little bit, not a lot, a little bit of an orange tint to the plug because it does have some MMT. But this has a lot of stabilizers in it and it takes about, once you put it in the tank, you got to wait about 40 minutes for it to fully circulate and mix in. But when I did run this stuff, even when I still had the original pump assembly, my filter assemblies lasted longer. And just because it doesn't fall out of suspension like some others do. So, not the premium, the professional stuff. I don't know, like I think, like if you're in a special league that requires a specific fuel, it will not be allowed. But like, for example, Matthew in Coda, it was any commercially available fuel. So didn't say anything about you couldn't use octane boosters, and he was allowed to use methanol injection. So very good. I like the stuff. If you're stuck somewhere, you don't have ethanol, you don't have a good connection to race fuel. Like I said, 3 or 4 ounces on 91 octane gets you like 96, and 3 or 4 ounces on 93 gets you 97 octane. It's easily a nice 20 to 40 horsepower bump, depending on whether or not you're running 91 or 93. So quite advantageous. All right, guys, that's been the hour. So I'm gonna try and sit there and see if I can squeeze the time for next Thursday. And all I ask is just stick to the topics if we like within reason, and not. I don't really want to get into stuff with other people, So no, you don't run lines inside the car. And I absolutely run an inline filter. The big thing with the connector with the XDI is the not having a forged 90 right at that connector, because the fuel's got to make that 90, and there's fuel pulsations and a pulse damper there, and being able to feed it more consistently. Um, God, I can't. It's so hard to give an exact number, um, but but you need to have a 6AN direct connection to that in order to make use of it. Like having that fitting and then going back to a 5/16 adapter is not going to be beneficial. So the big thing. Hey, what's up, Juan? Thank you. I'm glad, man. Um, so I mean that's the big thing. You got to have the feed lines that are appropriate size to make it beneficial. The big thing is, like I said, just being able to, as that fuel gets pulled into the pump, there's a pulse, and being able to, as it pulls the fuel through and then stops, being able to have a more consistent feed and pressure there does increase more in the higher RPM. We aren't talking drastic numbers. You're not going to see 20 horsepower gain out of it. 5, 10, that's not unreasonable. It's a compounding thing when it comes down to things like that. You need to have each step of the way, and you get 1% here, 2% there, 2% here. And those things add up where you get a car, you got two cars, both with the same exact fuel system, but one car makes 30 more horsepower, and the guy doesn't know why. That's what that's all about. So that's a compounding thing when it comes down to those adapters. But I've run it, tested it, and found improvement. Yeah, I'm going to try to do more on Thursdays. So, gentlemen, thank you for joining in. Appreciate it. And I'll see you all next week.